How does it feel being back in Oxnard?
I always like to come to Ventura County. People are always very welcoming here. There's a lot of support here for the farm worker movement, for our education, and for people that need help the most. And so I love Ventura County. I love Oxnard. I've been here many times on many battles. And the great thing about when we have battles here, we always win.
What was it like in those early days here in Oxnard and communities like it for the farm workers? What was it like?
Well, it was always rough and still is for farm workers because even though we've been organizing for decades, we still have farm workers that don't have adequate housing. Their children do not have a equitable education. I think Oxnard is much better, and Ventura County is much better in this respect than other areas. But throughout the Central Valley of California and other parts of California where farm workers live and work, they still have a lot of challenges. You know, the families do, the children do, and the farm workers themselves. You know, farm workers are essential workers. You know, they call firemen and policemen essential workers and healthcare workers. And yes, they are. But who feeds all of the others? It's the farm workers that feed not only the other essential workers, but they feed the whole nation and parts of the world also, not just California, not just the United States of America. And yet farm workers are not treated. They do not have, like other essential workers, they don't have the salaries, they don't have the benefits, you know, they don't have the pension plans that other workers have. So we have a long way to go yet to bring our farm workers to the equitable stages where they should be.
So when you look across the arc of decades of the work that you have done, what are the victories that you can point to and say, we have done this, we have done that? There's more to be done, but where do you see the impact?
Well, on the national level, I would like to point to one of the victories, but the fact that you have bathrooms in every agricultural field in California, that you have rest periods, that you have cold drinking water. Unfortunately, the only states where farm workers won the right to organize is California and Hawaii and maybe New York State. But the other states in the United States of America, farm workers do not have the right to organize into a union. So there's a lot of work to be done. But in order to just get those minimal victories, we had, you know, people that were jailed, hundreds of people have had to go to jail. We have 5 martyrs, 5 people that were killed in the farm worker, in the strikes and the boycotts that we had. And when you think of that, to think that it's a really high price to just get the basic human rights of farm workers. The other victory that we had when I was working with the United Farm Workers was to get the amnesty bill of 1986, where we had thousands of farm workers that got their legalization, and not only them, but a lot of people in the cities, because the farm workers were able to pull out that legislation so that, I mean, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of people, and not only in the fields, as I said, but also in the cities, got the legal status in the United States of America. The Immigration Reform Bill of 1986, which I lobbied through the Congress with the help of Senator Ted Kennedy, Howard Berman from California, Peter Rodino, and Schumer, who is now the head of the Senate. Those are the 4 people in the Congress that were responsible to get that bill. Reagan signed the bill, but he didn't do anything to get it past the Congress.
How does it strike you to know that most Americans are not aware of the plight of the farm workers, and yet they feed us? How does that strike you?
Well, we know that we have a lot of ignorance in our country right now, and there are people that are trying to create even more ignorance when we haven't even caught up. And I think that this fact that farm workers feed us and how important they are to our society, this has to be taught in our schools. It's got to be taught in our public schools. I think gender studies for women need to be taught, nonviolence need to be taught, labor studies, civic education. So we have pretty much a lot of ignorance in our society right now, but it can be remedied. But it's got to be done through education. And when I say that, at the same time, I acknowledge the fact that our schools are starved, our teachers are not paid enough money, like farm workers, so they need to get paid more money also. They don't have the support systems that they need in their schools. And the people that suffer because that lack of resources are the children of farm workers and the children of our communities of color.
There is no question, Dolores, that housing is the underpinning of a familia. Tell me, the impact that Cabrillo economic development is having on the lives of families and individuals?
Oh, it is so important. And, I remember when Caesar talked about when he lived here as a migrant farm worker. He was just a young person then at that point in time, and the family lived in a tent. Cesar Chavez's family lived in a tent here, and I believe they lived near Port Hueneme, because he said he and his brother Richard used to run all over on the sands there in Port Hueneme. They had the whole beach to themselves, but they lived in a tent. And so, coming a long way from that, and this is what Cabrillo Village, the housing development here is about.
Why is it important for people to support the mission of Cabrillo Economic Development Corporation?
Oh, I would hope that everybody continues to support whatever this great organization does in the community, because they have the right agenda, and they're acting on that agenda, and what they are doing is for the good of the community. And when you do something for farm workers and for homeless veterans and people, low-income housing for others, you're really doing this for all of the community, because we know we are preventing homeless. And that is one of the big blights that we have in the richest country of the world, the United States of America, that we have so many homeless and so many homeless veterans and homeless farm workers. This should not be.
You've come here today for a groundbreaking. You've seen many projects like this to help make affordable housing more available. Is there something uniquely special to you about this site, and what will you remember about today?
Well, to me it's very personal, because Cesar and I fought here in Oxnard when they were going to gentrify La Colonia, when they were going to raise the Colonia, knock down the houses in La Colonia. And just have all of the people there, many of them, the majority of them farm workers, would have been left homeless. But we were able to fight that a development that they were trying to do, and we stopped it, and to this day, La Colonia is alive and well.
What final words would you have for the residents who will be here in months and years to come? ¿Qué les diría? What do you tell them?
I would love if they knew the history of the farm worker struggle here in Oxnard, if they would know the history of Cesar and his family that worked here as migrant farm workers in Oxnard, and then lived here afterwards as residents here in Oxnard. But one more thing too, I hope that they would also be engaged also in the movement for social and economic justice. So it's not just about housing. We want them to participate. All of us have to keep democracy alive, and we would hope that the residents of the Dolores Huerta gardens here in Oxnard will also join in the movement, because we still have a long way to go.
I want to thank you.
I would like you to ask that question again, but this time direct your answer right to the camera.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, that'll be. This is the good one.
Okay, this is the closing one. You can look at the people themselves. Dolores, for them, your message to the people who will live here, ¿qué quiere usted? What do you want for them to do?
I hope that the residents of the Dolores Huerta Gardens here in Oxnard, California, will continue the legacy of the farm worker movement here and participate in elections, participate in civic action, in anything that the community needs, because though we know that the only way that we can keep democracy alive and to continue building more projects like this all up and down the state of California is when we, the people, make it happen. Sí se puede.
Gracias.